coming to the DASH community call for the 29th of March. And so these are the notes from last week. And we had quite a few notes last week. And it looks like this week in PR 336, we had a few comments come through, as well as issue 351. And so we also were thinking maybe of going over the option of with the baby hero test adding TCP to that. So wonder if we first wanted to start talking about these three, or if you guys had something else you wanted to go over first. I'm gonna move this window over here so I can see who's here. So for 336, there were a few comments. Let me pull that up here. First, GitHub wants to remind me to do my authentication here. Okay, so 336 was here, introduce the cluster tag, and way down at the bottom, there were a few more comments. Vincent, okay. We've tried to manually define, so it looked like Vincent, you had a comment here.
Yeah, I mean, from day one, the ACL rule didn't have prefix, and I think it should, and for some reason, there's just different things going on.
Sivantu.
Yeah.
What is
so
it
I had
by
just a couple
source?
of
Would you be able to clarify what this means here by match on all source?
this one mainly in the source stack provisioning for ACL rules. It says list of source tag names and separated by comma, and then if not provided, match on all source tags or no tag. And that wasn't quite clear to me what it means. So maybe it's just a matter of more clarification or just rewording. So that's where I was looking for more clarification.
I see. Okay, so I think the intention here is if the attribute itself is not provided, then it's like any other ACL rules. Like today, if we have a source IP or dest IP, and if it's not provided, it means like wildcard match, right?
Okay.
So that's
So I think
Mhm.
probably meant to say match on any tag or no tag. So it's probably just a matter of reading it in different.
Attribute is not provided.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one above, I have a very specific example, and I was just curious that based on how P4 is defined, what it would mean for that specific example.
Okay.
Yeah. And 10.1/16 going to tag 2 is absolutely possible. Yes.
LPM probably is not gonna result on matching the small prefix, right? If packet is matching /8,
but
not
that's okay, right? I
/16.
mean, we don't need. I don't think we're expecting LPM match here. So, but here, like for example, this the packet, if it matches /8, then it will be tagged. It will be marked with tag 1.
Okay, okay, yes. I mean, so that I'm actually give you this
LPM match at this point here, but like I said, I will clarify that. But that scenario is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that for that given scenario, you may have a multiple tags, right? As it suggests that.
Yeah, that's also possible.
And the way people.
No, for the same prefix, are you saying like if there are for the same prefix like /8 pointing to tag 1 and tag 2? Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's the way I read. Maybe, I don't know if I'm misreading it, but I see that the table definition has the action of source tag assignment, and that is one value. That's a single value.
Isn't the goal though is that as long as you match one of the tag defined ACL rules, you basically match. I mean, assuming that the rest match, you basically match the rule, right?
You match the rule, but if you're matching multiple rules and priorities may be different across multiple rules, so end result really depends that how many rules you are matching.
Way of providing an additional source. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's how I view as well. So I think my comments were really more about the lookup and the action. But what you just said, John, I agree. I mean, that's the way I view as well. So Prince, I think that's fair. I think this can be taken offline, and then if we can get more clarification on that.
Yeah, sure.
On the side note, the destination and source IP addresses the existing IP and destination in the ACL rule, which are IPs, inode prefixes, those seem to be maintained in the PR at least. Is the goal to still allow that or go to only prefix?
No, I mean it's the previous ones are still valid.
The problem I have with the previous one is they were IPs, they were not prefixes, as opposed to the source tag, which are prefixes, which is, I think,
Prefixes, yeah. I think that we can.
yeah, see the generated attributes that we have currently are DIP. No, they're not prefixes. They're IP addresses. Now
It's
in the
not
tag,
okay.
in the tag, they are prefixes, which is good. You keep the flexibility, so that's good.
So we have a path forward here then. So we need to take a look at that, is what it sounds like. Am I on mute?
No, the fact that we have currently IP addresses as opposed to prefixes.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it needs to be looked at if prefixes are supposed to be the case.
Okay.
Supposed to be, but it's not a backward compatible change, unfortunately.
Okay. Any other comments on 336?
There was one on the generation of the source tag versus destination tag. I think Marion made it, and I had the same comment. So hopefully it'll get addressed.
Okay. Let me try and find that.
I don't remember what it was, but it was basically the fact that the generation object has an object for source and destination as opposed to just a tag. It's a little bit like ACL. I don't remember what it was. Pretty sure Marion made it.
Marion, are you there?
Yeah, no, you're way too high in the comments. It's
Okay.
somewhere below. It was a recent comment.
Right.
Okay.
Here.
I remember this. Yeah.
It's not a blocker, but it definitely complicates the code when it doesn't need to be.
Oh, here. Okay. I have no idea how to combine the two fields matching one key into P4. If you have any solution, I'm glad to know it. Does anyone know how to do this?
Yeah, there is an example ACL. ACL tables are grouped into one API. There is already an example in people code.
Do you want to give that to him or?
1 second. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll send an example.
Okay. So you, so you'll send that to him or you'll just throw it into the PR?
Yeah, I will attach it in the PR as a comment.
Okay, thank you so much. Also had Murcha on the line. Murcha, could we talk
Yes,
a
I'm
little
here.
bit about adding TCP to the hero test? Do we want to talk
Yes.
about that a little bit today?
Sure. Standard
Okay.
answer is yes. Please go ahead.
Yes.
But okay, let see the details.
Yeah. That was Reshma was asking about that last week. There's Reshma. Okay. Reshma, do you want to cover or start off, kick this off? Okay.
Sure, please. So in the baby hero tests, I think I mentioned very briefly earlier, Mircha, that if we have UDP, we currently had UDP flows in the test cases, and in the community, we have majority of the time been discussing TCP. And you mentioned that TCP has too many states and it's complicated. So we basically discussed that maybe we can just do a couple of states, you know, SYN and FIN, something like that, whatever the least number of states that we can use. But, you know, the hero tests would be, it would be really good to have TCP flows in them instead of UDP, or, you know, in addition to UDP, I mean.
Yeah. I'm totally okay to have it added in the test. To add it myself.
That's fine. This week is it's not so time critical that we need it in this week or anything, you know. But in general, it'll be good to just have them in the hero test cases.
Yeah, definitely, and that is the intention to add it. It was just a matter of timing and availability, but yes, definitely TCP is part of the test.
Time permits. And is this something anyone can do, Mircha?
I would say yes, because the packet, it's like Ethernet IP, VXLAN, Ethernet IP, UDP, and somebody can copy paste that and say, boom, TCP instead of UDP, and then play with the TCP flags, like SYNAC, whatever, FINAC, and send those.
And if someone gets stuck, could they ask you?
Yeah, of course. I'll help too. It's
okay. Cool.
Didn't get to it this week.
If you can help, that is perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Reshma. All right, and then Prince, did we want to cover any more on 341? I think that one we pretty much covered. Just want to make sure there were no other questions or anything about that one.
I had this one question when I was looking at that PR this morning. That NVGRE and VXLAN are applicable to the service tunnel endpoint because of the service that's publicly available and accessible, and for that we need these two encapsulations. And some of these are old devices, they use NVGRE, all that sounds good. My question is related to the inbound again. So for inbound, I would expect that the appliance would terminate the non-VXLAN tunnel, and then for the VM, it has to be VXLAN, right? Do we want to support NVGRE and VXLAN on the VM? VM is identified
towards
by
the
VXLAN.
VM. It is a VXLAN.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in the in the flow. We have defined it, right? Towards the VM, it will be another VXLAN and cap using the VM VNI.
Right. Okay, so the appliance, the DPU card will basically ensure that the encapsulation is only VXLAN.
Yeah.
Out to the VM. Okay.
Yeah.
If that is mentioned clearly in the document, then it's fine.
Yeah, I think it is mentioned in a few places, but yeah, we can check offline if.
Sure.
That is.
Thank you.
Did anyone else have a question about this one? Is Hanif? No, Hanif's not here today. Okay. So this one was kind of a big one. Did anyone else think about this last week and have anything they wanted to ask or talk about? I think we're done, but. Okay. I feel like I've waited my 7 seconds. Okay. So Mircha did provide some drawings, etc., for this direction decision prints. It just came in this morning. So do we want to look at those now since we're all here?
Which one?
This was the, remember last week we talked about, so the difference between the RFC and the way DASH is doing the, what's the VNI, and could we use more than one? Is that the right recap, Merchant? He was going to place
and I
right up in
can
the issue.
share
Sure.
and go to
I can
the
stop
point.
sharing.
Sure, it's the same thing. I just made it as big as possible.
Sure.
So there is a lot of information here. I'll start from the beginning. So first, SciConfig, and I provided here an example, allow to have different VNIs for both inbound and outbound, because when you set direction lookup entry, you can have multiple of those. So you can have a direction lookup with 3, 4, and all of them will be considered, not only one. Dash config does not allow this flexibility, so Sci allows it and works. So one request was, and first request is to allow Dash config to have same flexibility as Sci and not limit that use case. So that is the first point. Do you agree with that or not, or comments before I move to others?
Yeah, I haven't seen this before, so I'm just going through this. So
Vinod sent like 2 weeks ago, I think, to you and another team member of yours, I think, packet captures and the same thing, and I think I replied to it also. So the SciConfig allows you first, you can have multiple VTEPs, basically they are called VIPs, whatever, same thing, on the DPU. Here I created one, but in theory you can create 2 and have 2 different ones that terminate the tunnels. Then you can have multiple direction lookups. It allows you for this. And like I said, I tested it and works. I cannot do the same with a dash config. So dash config limits only to 1.
I think the last time we discussed, the main feedback was what is the use case here, right? Like, so I think
but like, okay, I'm from Keysight. I'm not operating a data center. Okay, so if you ask me what is the use case, it's hard for me to explain. I can go about.
I mean, our
explaining
definitions
that,
are made based on the use case, right? So if you need to extend or if you need to add more, then I think we can do it based on.
Would the use
but the
case
point
be
is, Sci
for
is
testing?
doing it. Sci is doing it. Sci supports it. And we'll go into RFC later, but why limit what Sci already is capable of doing it through the dash config, where it could be a simple change that will allow to maintain same flexibility? Use case or not, it's like Sci works, and I can prove it. It works and has a flexibility, and the way the pipeline is defined, it will work. It's just as a dash format of the config, it's adding some limitations in place. And what I'm advocating for is not to have those limitations in the dash config. It doesn't require any extra work since Sci already supports them. It's just for dash format to keep the same flexibility.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in line, but to provide same flexibility.
I need to push it back a little bit, right? So, if we think about this, the project is about end-to-end integration, right? So if you think about the hardware, the DPUs, okay, DPU can do anything. It can do GRE, VXLAN, Geneve, right? So, lots of different encapsulations. Yes, sure, Coder can do anything, but do we expose all of them? It has to step by step, right? So, basically the project runs like, okay, so we understand what is the scenario, what need to be supported. Then we do all this, design documentation, and then, make sure you understand the scenario and have the scenario being coded and tested, right? So therefore, yeah, sure, we can expose everything to the northbound, but it does involve additional, development work and testing work, right? So, but if we don't have a use cases right now, then, what, right? So we see.
Is the use case just to be able to configure and test it? Would that be a valid use case?
I mean, it has to be exposed by, GMI, or other things, right? So there's additional coding needed to expose this feature.
I guess I would ask, if we don't want to support that use case today in the northbound, is there anything we've done in today's schema in the northbound that would restrict it from being added later, or have we painted ourselves into a corner with the way it's structured? Would it be an easy forward, forward compatible type of change, or did we, let's say, limit the way we express the configuration so that it would be an awkward breaking change to accommodate this use case? I think that's maybe the important question to ask. Even if we don't support it today, how are we going to make it hard to support tomorrow?
I
think
this
if
is where I'm
you have,
going, and sorry, please, but I'm showing here. I don't know how big it is on everyone's screen,
Yeah.
but I'm showing here the Dash config. It's
Yeah.
Dash appliance allows SIP. It's
SIP.
the VIP basically, and VMVNI is the one used for direction lookup. It allows only one of these objects.
Okay.
While SONiC clearly allows multiple VIPs and multiple direction lookups, if this could be, if I can create this appliance with maybe a list here or something, it will be good. So it's just to give the flexibility. It doesn't need to be implemented. It's
Yeah. So you want to change that to a list structure, a list
maybe to
element,
a list, and
but
right now it's one item, and in the future could be expanded in multiple and so on. But I don't think we should limit it. This
yeah. So
my
you answered my question. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head then. Maybe the recommendation is to change that to a list structure, or somehow refactor that element so that later you could allow multiple.
VNIs.
No, I don't know. I don't understand which one to change.
that Dash appliance.
that appliance table. Currently,
Dash
it's
appliance
individual entries, but I think
allows
one
only
of the
for one
proposal
SIP
is like
and one VMVNI.
Right.
While the SI allow for multiple SIPs, and which are VIPs here basically,
And what is the proposed change?
to allow here
List.
maybe a list, to have multiple SIP VMVNI pairs, or
What is the use case?
I'm keep being asked about this. I do not have a use case. I'll say it clearly. I'm just saying SI already allows this functionality and it's already working. Why introduce artificial limitation on Dash config? That's my only question.
Yeah, all right. I think we're going, and going chase and tell again, right? So then I'm going to ask, okay, so yeah, sure, I explained that why, there's a limitation, from the hardware going to all the way up to the software, why there's a limitation on some of the hardware features not being exposed right now, even though hardware supports it. There's a, this is how the software development process, I understand, right? So, you can make that a feature request. You can put the issue there. But I think it depending on the whole community's bandwidth to see, how do we prioritize those features, right? So
I think that the request is simple. Just change this one element to support a list, the current dash could say only one element may be included.
I mean, okay, so I don't know, like what is the development work that's associated, right? So maybe on the schema side it's simple, doesn't mean the implementation is simple.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean
implementation
that
has to change. Yeah.
it doesn't mean that all those validations we need to consider all these scenarios. Do people want to use it in other way? Have we considered those kind of things, right? So it's not saying okay, we just change a schema, change one value to a list of values, and that's it.
Would it be beneficial to align, or not align, but to have the same flexibility as Psi in the future?
But to answer the the previous question, it seems like on schema we didn't prevent those features to be added in the future, right? So maybe in the future, if someone asks that we need this one, they bring the value use case here, we can definitely discuss. I mean, this is the same. This is the same way that the Psi community, discussing like that as well. So, the hardware supports a lot of different features, but I don't think current Psi has exposed all these different features. So therefore, when someone proposes, okay, I have to expose some new APIs, then they will bring the use cases in the Psi forum, and all the vendors will discuss this, this valid scenarios, and then agree on the the new APIs there.
But this already works on Psi. That's what I'm saying. Psi already supports all this.
It's the same, right? So in this project there's a different layers, right? So there's if we're talking about SONiC, the same thing, right? So Psi supports a lot of feature. For example, this PVST. I was just hearing that the SONiC doesn't support that, right? So then the people say, okay, I want to have this feature. Then you bring valid use case, and someone need to do the design and see how we fit those customers' use case.
So Gohan, they asked, would it be difficult in the future to change it, just based on your experience, or would it be super hard?
I mean, I don't speak for the implementation because we never evaluate the implementation, but from the schema side, it seems, we are not preventing for the future to be able to support that, right? So.
Is this blocking you, Mircea?
No, not blocking. I mean, I'll change it. I'm just flagging my observations.
Yeah.
In the end, I can send any packet I want from my side, so fine.
It's an
but
awesome
that's
observation.
not the point. Yeah, and I have few more here. Sorry, I click on the picture. Not prevent you from having that. And if somebody wants to start 2 VMs with a valid scenario based on the RFC, again, why limit? That want to pick up Dash and use it.
No, I want to make it clear, right? So we do not limit it, right? So we do not want to limit as well, right? So, but I think the community is right. They are welcome to bring to this forum, and we're going to discuss it. We're going to, meet those customer scenarios there.
But if it's not there from the beginning, user wouldn't feel compelled to act within the restrictions that are being implied instead of keep trying to argument why they want to use duplicate max. While it's allowed from the beginning because RFC allows it, then it's okay if we put this limitation from the beginning. Same like with the VNI, people will be like, okay, this is a constraint. I'm gonna keep using it like this unless I'm really gonna be put against the wall that I need this feature.
I mean, it's kind of hypothetical questions, right? So I think if there's a customer needed, feel free to bring the customer and we can discuss about those use cases here. I mean, it's open community.
And
we're not saying that the Dash only is serving for for hypercloud or right. So it's an open community just like SONiC, right? So so welcome the customer to bring their use cases and their feedbacks to this forum, and here we have all the vendors and we'll help them to meet their use cases. But I mean, but if it's a hypothetical use case, I think it's difficult.
So now maybe this is happening, but this is the use case here for which we wrote diagram where we have two servers with hypercards and everything, and we have two VMs, different max in this case. This VM it's on VNI 1, this VM it's on VNI 2. But now this VM VNI 1 communicates with sites outside, let's say. This also using tunnels with VNI 1, multiple actually, and all terminated on different VTEPs. And again, this scenario, it's currently not supported even by SAI because of the direction lookup based on the VNI. And if you have same VNI, both inbound and outbound, SAI is going to get confused about which one is which. But this is, again, a valid scenario. And hardware itself supports this scenario for everyone that implemented VXLAN underneath. Having same VNI on multiple tunnels, irrespective if they are inbound or outbound, it's a total valid scenario based on the RFC. Also, the scenario where we have another one where the VM, it's on VNI 2, goes to the DPU, and then it sends the traffic now on a different tunnel with VNI 3. This is also valid and again, validated and working. This also works in SAI because VNI is being different, then you can do direction lookup based only on VNI. So those are the two scenarios. The red line is the traffic flow from one to another, and the green line is the traffic flow for this other VM. Why would you want to terminate the traffic on multiple tunnels? I assume multiple exits from the data center or going to the customer site. If you have something like hybrid cloud on-premise kind of deployment and you want everything to be under the same VNI, that's a scenario. So that could be a possible scenario where you want to have in the hybrid deployment on-premise and on cloud, and you want everywhere to use the same VNI to identify your network. But again, I'm not deploying a data center, so I can show you the theoretical example and why would you do that, and quote paragraphs from the RFC, but not bring a real use case, So all these are working in the hardware, are supported
So
by
I
the
think
RFC.
I think it's still the same case I discussed previously, right? So, I also I'm not able to provide more argument on this front, right? So, but I think it's going to my same argument from my previous comments. So
yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah, I think it's probably if you still, because I don't know if I can resolve this issue right now, right? So
Yeah, so it's like if the scenarios arise and the resources are available to do it, then we can
To add
make
them
it
in
as
the future.
flexible as SAI. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah,
Go
and
on.
for one of them, even SAI needs to be improved. Like I said, the direction lookup currently in SAI for the second scenario that I mentioned here, it's clearly VNI based. So if I have inbound and outbound tunnels with the same VNI, even SAI is going to get confused because, and this is why I brought this item where direction lookup shouldn't be only VNI based, should include maybe the MAC and the IP of the ENI. as well, or a tunnel ID or something, because you can have this tunnel from this VTEP to this VTEP with VNI1, and you can have this other tunnel going here from this VTEP to other VTEP. So it's clearly a different tunnel using, again, VNI1. And again, VXLAN allows this, but this is not allowed inside. So the green line here, this use case is not allowed inside. The red line, it is allowed inside, but not in Dash. And everything here, it's allowed in VXLAN RFC.
Got it.
So there are 2 points. One, making SI a bit more flexible to match with the VXLAN RFC, and then keeping Dash as flexible as SI also.
Yeah, I think when you say making SI more flexible, it also means the data plane implementation has to be supporting it, and that could be, quite a bit of effort. You even have technical limitations.
The hardware already supports it. If I use a private vendor APIs to configure this, works.
I see.
Whoever implemented VXLAN, so making also SI works, I assume it wouldn't be that much. Now, I'm not sure about BMV2 before seeing if it has, but I'm missing from that one.
Well,
so I have a quick question. We had started with an underlying assumption for the Dash about, it's in the data center, and in order for us to really find out the direction that it is an outbound packet, we are using some, reserved VNIs. Okay, so you just have a range of VNIs that are reserved that are assigned in a manner to these, VMs, so to speak, and they'll be unique across all the VMs, right? So as to really find out, who is sending out, and we can determine based on that particular reserved VNI or private VNI, whatever you want to call it, to say that, okay, this is actually an outbound packet. And this was the underlying assumption. So I can understand that, okay, VXLAN allows, a lot of things, but in this case, right, if someone is configuring it in one data center, and then that configuration essentially is a control configuration, why would we think that, okay, there are these overlapping VNIs?
Like I said, that was based.
But that breaks the assumption that, okay, how do you really find out the direction, right?
Yeah, this is why this item it's asking to actually, for direction decision, not to use a VNI only, and actually add the MAC and IP into the decision for lookup. So exactly what you are flagging out, it's what this item is asking for. It's asking to change the decision to use only the VNI for direction lookup and add more elements for that hash or whatever you want to call it, that will make the decision in order to allow this flexibility. So I'm asking for that change.
So you can uniquely identify in the data center by using the ENI, MAC, and IP, and it will not break the.
And VNI, you need all three, because again, if you have duplicate MACs, you could have duplicate IPs, and then you have to have unique VNIs. So you need all three.
No. I think another thing basically is that, after you have found out a direction, the only way to find out an ENI is looking at an inner MAC. Okay. So how do you carry an ENI in the packet, so to speak, right? So if you're saying that you need all three, where is an ENI in the packet?
You need all three in the DPU to make the decision. Of course, once it reaches the VM, it's completely decapsulated from the VNI.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to look more into this one. I haven't really looked at this 351, but the way I understood the flow was the reserve VNI, then going into inner MAC to find out the ENI, and then go with the flow with that. So and then that was probably a really covered all the cases in my view. So I'll have to see whether or not this essentially satisfies everything that you're talking about here.
I added you as a reviewer, Hanif, just in case you
Okay.
want to see it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Yeah, and like I'm showing here in the config, today VNI is a one used for direction, and you have this direction lookups based on the VNI. I'm showing the site config here on the side. So yes, today it's use select a list of VNIs, and that is how the direction is being done. Again, dash config does not support the list here.
Yeah.
Same thing. Site does.
Yeah. So it's
Okay,
9:50,
that was
and
it.
does anyone else have a burning opinion on this one before we move on to the last one? I'm gonna go ahead and display my screen. And Chris was wondering if there was possibly an update to 346 here.
Yeah, Christina. So there is no current update. I think it's
Okay.
it should be addressed by the end of the week.
Okay.
Yeah, he put in the chat. Thanks, Vladimir.
Yeah,
Oh,
no problem.
okay. Okay. And so, of course, you know me, I've taken a ton of notes here, but
Yeah.
is there
Oh, no.
anything else you guys would like to cover today?
Yeah, 246 from Marian. Last
Oh,
week,
okay.
we
Yeah.
we determined it's being blocked for some unknown GitHub
Yeah.
status, and seems like just resubmitting it would be a good idea.
Or the amend and
Oh, yeah.
push force thing.
Yeah.
Or
That's right.
commit amend. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just waiting for the author of the PR to do that, which would be Marian.
Yeah, I'm bringing one more pull request for tomorrow, and I will also update this one.
Wait,
Let's
because
get back to that tomorrow.
some people have actually used this change in an experimental way and would like the support of it in the repo.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like to extend a little bit on the bulk APIs, if you got a minute.
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be clear that besides this PR, SRC doesn't. I mean, this is the first stone for bulk API support. SRC doesn't support it yet, right, Chris?
But that's my understanding, and maybe Reshma can speak to that and give us an update.
Yeah, I think bulk APIs is definitely there in our list of things to do. I think Anton was planning to add that.
Because what I
Are
see
we-
in the
Mhm.
sorry, what
Go
I see in the PR, I think Chris mentioned that to me, pointed me to a PR there. Side bulk API was basically unrolling a for loop, right? So it's kind of a vendor side. We never see a side call to a bulk API yet. So I understand it's work in progress, right?
Right. Definitely. That's something we have plans to complete.
So Reshma, I reached out to Anton direct yesterday, and he said, I'm not sure Intel would know. So there might be some wires crossed. I don't know that he's got that on his list, so maybe we can look
Oh,
into
it was there on the list, but yeah, we'll double check and we will sync up on that.
Yeah.
I guess my main point is that there are various pieces that are ongoing right now, and I think people should know about it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's good that you're testing the boundaries, Vincent.
Mhm.
So the question perhaps to Gohan and Prince, are there going to be Dash Orc implementations that use these bulk APIs pretty soon? Are we going to be running into this from the SONiC side as well?
SONiC already does bulk API.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that very well.
SONiC already uses bulk API.
Understood, but is the Dash Orc going to be using that, and are we going to be running into this pretty soon?
No, it's already
That's
using
what I'm
bulk
saying.
APIs.
Work agent is already using.
Yeah, it's the org agent question, right? Because the org agent has an implementation for calling any of these overlay APIs. Then that pertains to that question, I guess.
Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought Dash Org was like a new orchestrator. And I know that the standard org agent uses it, but is
No,
Dash Org
also is using. There's already
Okay.
the implementation of Dash Org. Yeah.
Some
Okay.
of these things are common and utilized by all the org
Okay, so
tasks.
I guess the point here that Vincent's brought out is we don't have the ability to test it at the DPU level. And so people are going to be running into this when they integrate with SONiC, and we haven't created a test harness capability.
Right. Well, we don't have access to the SONiC Dash anyway, at least the community doesn't. But you're right, it's like testing through ScyThrift, like we do with the other stuff, right? That's correct.
Now you can use Redis to test it. So
well,
right.
Look, well, yes and no, because Redis doesn't know, SyncD doesn't know about Dash either. That's part of the SONiC world, and it's a lot of effort basically to make it Dash aware for bulk. And I mean, it could be done, I suppose, but at that point, I'm like, not. I'm kind of giving up a little bit on it. So the point is, the community is using ScyThrift, right? So
yeah,
that's kind of what we need there.
Yeah.
Related to bulk, also, I'd like to understand how much, if you have a bulk object, do we know how many single requests? Is there a mask or a scale of a bulk object? Like if you have an ACL rule, for instance, if you have a bulk ACL rule, how many ACL rules do you have within that bulk object? Are there limitations?
That's a real good question, and there's going to be possibly limitations at every layer in the stack, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, just memory buffer sizes, thrift message sizes. There's a whole chain of things that could be bottlenecks.
Right. So I guess I'd like to understand if, let's say, whoever's running the bulk API above Sci, has a huge buffer, has no limit. So let's say it does one with, 10,000 ACL rules. Well, maybe the Sci vendor doesn't have the capability to handle that chunk and may have to do sub chunks down to its own layer, whatever it is, to the SaaS-bound interface. So do we have to do this? Knowing the scale of a bulk object, I think per bulk object, ACL, and we got various ones, might be a good idea might be good to know if we can define that.
Yeah, and also we can follow the max numbers that are currently used in SONiC in the ScyThrift as well, so it can match, and that way the vendor libsci can act in a similar fashion, how it can handle that number down to it. Yeah.
You mentioned SONiC. Is that number somewhere that we can access?
I actually don't know what that number is, so if anybody knows, or we can dig into that.
It almost begs for a capabilities query API where the NOS can query the side device. What size chunk can you handle? And it adjusts, right? Like a page size. Because Dash really opens the door to massive, right? Massive sizes.
Yeah, because I gotta believe when whoever built that first bulk object has to know how many can I fit in there. They're not gonna blindly fit everything they have.
Actually, from Sci perspective, there is no limitation, and I would expect that this will be per vendor implementation. So in case some vendor need to split the bulk request into chunks, it should be done inside Sci implementation, no?
I'm not saying you shouldn't. Yes, but what's the is there really is there a limitation? Like if Redis, for instance, if Redis has the maximum scale programmed, like the hero config, the here config has a huge number of mapping entries, for instance. Is it going to do, or ACL rules, I think it's 1.2 million per vport, per ENI. Is it going to chunk them all within one bulk object?
I will definitely try that.
Well, I know you will, but that's what I'm after. If the rule is anything above side doesn't care, then at that point, well, okay, maybe the vendor has to make sure the side bulk API can handle one object can contain the maximum scale of the single request object. That's fine by me. I just need to understand that. I gotta believe there are limits all at various places.
Is this a good stopping point for everyone for the day?
Yeah, I think what we have is food for thought.
Yeah, definitely.
And Mircea has vowed to try to break everyone's implementation.
So how do we find the answer to that? I guess who can answer my question, I suppose.
Question being, is there a reasonable upper limit? Is that the question?
Yes.
I think the question should be is that, you know, we need to really look at the current implementation of SONiC SAI, right? There are these SAI-lib implementation from different vendors, and then there are, you know, they do support bulk APIs, and we really need to find out, you know, how does a caller know what type of a scale of those APIs are, right? Whether it's you talk about in terms of the buffer size or in terms of the number of objects or in terms of, you know, number of attributes, whatever be the case that you can back it up, you need to really find out an existing way. What are the assumptions that, you know, the upper layer from the ARC agent is, you know, making in order to, or how does it really find out that it can pack these many and not more? And the, you know, the upper limit part. So I think we you know, the question really goes back to the existing way how things are done in SONiC SAI. Okay.
Yeah, one example could be just the ROT, right? ROTs is a huge set of elements usually, so.
Yeah, I mean, the default assumption would be if the data plane can support a certain table size, then it has to support a bulk API access to fill that table. That's sort of the unspoken assumption.
Yeah, but I'd like to have a written assumption.
Yeah, and I will predict that if we're doing test harnesses like SideThrift, I suspect the transport layer is going to choke on that. I mean, I've seen that with gRPC where suddenly, oh, message is 500K bytes. We didn't, you know, the default is set, or the default buffer size is 500K if you don't tweak the parameters of the server. Things like that happen, but we'll find out.
Yeah, RPC is 4 megabytes, so yeah.
Yeah, so I think what just that you know, I think what we are looking for, what Vincent is looking for, is the upper bound that is there from the control plane side, and what that is, right? So in SONiC, if we can find what is that upper bound for the bulk APIs, and basically we want to match similar scale in the SideThrift too when we implement the bulk API. So we will match that. So it will be good to dig into what that upper bound is in SONiC control plane side of things, and just to be aware and how the vendor implementation can use it, do the necessary mapping.
Yeah, but I think overall, I think Chris mentioned it'd be nice to have a capability database. After all, there is a Git. I don't remember what the API is, but there is a SAI API to basically provide, you know, number of ports, this and that, so the vendor can push back capabilities. It'd be nice if that existed for bulk as well, but.
Would it be okay if we picked this up next week? About it and picked it up next week? It's 10:03.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you guys have other meeting. I'm late for one.
Yeah.
Would that be all right?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, cool. I'm going to stop the recording. Really